Fiona Horne and Dave Hopkins, also known as Spiff from Seawitch. Welcome to Australian Musician.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Greg. Thank you for having us.
Not a problem. When you guys started Seawitch, what were the main elements that you wanted to be involved? What were the goals?
I'll just play some great rock and roll music. Fiona and I used to play in a couple of bands 30 years ago on the same bill, and
But not the same band.
different music. And
Well, we weren't in the same bands. We were in two separate bands. He was in a band called the Hellmenn, and I was in a band called the Mothers, which is an all-girl sort of punk band. So we shared the stages of some events. So that was a long time ago. When David sort of said to me he wanted to create a band called Seawitch, he was telling me that it would be like a heavy rock band, and that he was thinking, oh, you know, you could use some of the lyrics from your spells and your witchy stuff, and that could be a fun sort of angle to have. And then he talked about us writing the songs together so that we would actually collaborate, which we'd never done before. We've never actually written music together before, and that was a huge part of the appeal of the project for me.
Yeah. Had you written with other people before, Fiona?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was a co-writer on all the Def Effects songs, and back, you know, in early days before Def Effects took off, when I had my little, you know, punk band, the Mothers, and then even before that, it was band Sister Sludge, and I wrote songs then on guitar as best as my minimal skills could. But David's a very adept guitarist. I mean, I stopped doing music, he kept going. So certainly his skill has come into the forefront with the guitar playing, and I think we have a unique chemistry when we write together.
It's different. I used to write together with Ben from the Hellmenn as well. I'd mainly do the music and Ben had put the lyrics together, but it'd be more a tune and then the words. But we've actually written these together, and I've been helping Fiona with some melodies and she's been helping me with riffs, so it was quite special. And we did that, you know, whole album in lockdown in ISO, a song a day, which was incredible because usually they don't come that easy. So that was pretty interesting and exciting. Yeah, it was good.
So the album is called Well of Spells, and it's out on October 21. Over what period of time was the album created?
Well, like Dave was just saying, when, probably to put it in context of how we even got into the same space to write, very briefly, I was living over in the Caribbean and David was here in Western Australia, where we're both sitting right now. And as we kind of said before, we knew each other 30 years ago. We also dated 30 years ago. So when all the COVID crazy happened in 2020, he said, come over and let's write music. So the long story short is that I did manage to do that, got a repatriation flight, went into ISO in Melbourne. David drove across the country, brought me back to his house here in Dunsborough, and he has a music studio. And so we had to ISO. I mean, we had to do another 14 days of ISO. So we sort of made a pact that we'd go into ISO and we'd write a song a day in the studio. And that's what we did. There were 9 songs that came from that period. And then we also actually wrote a couple outside of the ISO period, Which Is Forever, and what was the other one that we wrote outside of the ISO period? There was another one that's because the album Well of Spells has 8 tracks, but we also released a 4-track EP last year in June, and so it was all those songs that kind of came from that period. Primarily, you know, the seed was planted in isolation.
So when you came to recording, did you record together as a band or did you record your parts separately? As
a band, yeah. Most of it was, you know, live track, and we put overdubs of guitars and vocals and whatever was needed with an old mate who's got a great analog studio up in Perth, and old guitar buddy from the M16s, who's now a really good engineer and producer, Ken Kilowatt. So we did both the EP and the album up there at his place in WA in Scarborough.
We had, like Dave was saying, really great analog studio. So it was a treat walking in there for me. I sort of was lucky in my years in Def Effects to record in some pretty amazing studios, not only in Australia, but also in Los Angeles. So I walked into Kenny's studio in Scarborough, you know, looking out over the beach, and it just had all this epic analog equipment, amazing, like a whole wall, like a wall of old amps. You know, it was just this really
lots of vintage,
stuff. And And we should say as well, you know, we say we're the band. Well, we're not just the band. There's Brad, our bass player, Brad Miller, who's amazing. And at the time, and he's an old music buddy of Dave's. And at the time, we had a wonderful drummer, Matt Hamilton, who recorded.
Yeah.
And there was Ben alone as well. We kind of had a few drummers in the band, and even now we have another drummer. He's drummer number 9, Adam Sciullo, who's amazing, and again an old music buddy. And he's the one that's sticking around. He'll be touring.
Speaking of studio gear and things that you play, Fiona, I believe you've got a 78 Fender Strat that you use.
Well, I only use it because that was one of the ways David talked me into leaving the Caribbean paradise of my home, where I was living over in America, where I'd been in America for 20 years. Now I'm, you know, living on an island in the Caribbean, working, flying airplanes. He said, look, you know, nothing's going to be flying for a while with this COVID stuff. And I've got a white Fender Strat that you can, it's a vintage Strat you can play if you come over here. And I was like, oh, twist my arm not. And that was part of the ways he taught me into leaving my life and joining him here 2 years ago, albeit, because that was in June of 2020.
No, it was meant to be hers because I sold it to a friend. And then a couple of years later, I bought it back off him. And then a couple of months later, Fiona came back in my life, and it's just like, oh, and this is 78 year of the horse, and that's Fiona. Yeah. Year of the horse. They're meant to be yours, the Palomino.
And Dave, you're more of a Les Paul guy, I believe, or why do you prefer Les Pauls?
Yeah, that's why Fiona got the Strat. No, she loved it. And
I had Strat in the mother.
I love SGs and Epiphones, as you can see. So they've all sort of, I guess that's like a cross between an SG and a Strat. Yeah.
And you generally play through Marshalls. What do you like about the Marshall sound?
Well, I love Voxes too. Any old English amp is fantastic. I've got a nice old Selma, which Fiona's fallen in love with. That sounds really good. That's like a Vox AC15 sort of blues breaker. And I like the old Marshall Plexis because they're pretty reliable and they're a warm tone and no master volume, so you just wind them up to break up nice and sound sweet.
Yeah. Force is the current single off the album. How did that track come about and what's it about?
Well, musically, I could say when David was playing some riffs and I was sort of starting to think about how to weave some lyrics in, to me, it reminded me of one of the bands that I hear David often play himself. Like if he's going to jam around and warm up his fingers, he'll always play something from MC5, it appears, something that Fred Sonic Smith would play. And so that song to me had this feeling of freedom, you know, like those great tracks, those great rockin' tracks from the late 60s, early 70s. And so the lyric for me was about, it came from a witch's ritual that we would do to cut away things we may determine that are blocking us or limiting us from living a free and happy life. And so the lyric is kind of like that. And you actually invoke the archangel, the Judeo-Christian angel, Archangel Michael, who has this big flaming sword. So in the ritual, you know, you call in the Archangel Michael, and he brings in his flaming sword, and you know, you're seeing all this in a vision as you do the ritual, and he cuts away with his sword the ties that bind you and frees you. And so that's how the chorus goes. You know, give me your sword, cut it away, free me. that's how random it is.
I guess
David
musically, a bit of a sword, isn't it? You know,
could look at it like that, yeah. But David musically was I mean, look, I should let you just talk about all that. Your influences are pretty cool.
Oh, I'm the gear expert. Yeah, I like old gear just because it smells better than the new stuff. You open up your old amp, smells good. It's like Granny's closet.
Yeah. What about pedals? Do they play a big part in the band sound?
Oh, a little bit. Brad, the bass player, loves getting a sound out of his amps and just wind them out. I do as well. Like most of the studio stuff, we just all in there live, and Marshall will be cranked, Ampeg 8x10, and old Blue Line will be cranked, and a nice old Ludwig big kit, and that'll be it. And then we'll overdub with something, you know, like some old fuzz pedals or something like that, you know, like the old...
Telling the story.
The real basic stuff.
This pedal is stuck together with gaff tape, this fuzz space, if you can see it. David tells me it's worth like 10 grand or something crazy. How much is it
I
worth?
saw it on
It's very
eBay for
rare.
about 5. It's
$5
just
grand.
stupid now.
So a pedal that Hendrix used, isn't it?
Yeah, but I wouldn't pay more than $500 for a pedal. People, I think, use way too many pedals, and they cost more than amps. You know, why not spend a couple of grand on an amp and just get your sound from there?
But David has, like, saying he's not talking about a lot of pedals. When he gets set up for a show or even just practice, he's got this big case, and they're all lined up, all these pedals. Little old me, I've just got one, Black Dust, and I can't take any credit for getting it. It was David said, this will sound good.
That's a fuzz.
It's a fuzz, yeah. It played through the Selma, which is my favourite amp to play through. It's, how many watts is the Selma?
It's a 20 watts.
20 watts through 2 Celestion speakers, is it?
No, they're old Goodmans.
Old
yeah,
Goodmans,
similar
okay.
to that. Yeah.
Anyway, the amp has just got this, I mean, I love that I can just wind up the Black Dust and then feedback. I mean, I can literally just turn around and get feedback, and it's such great feedback because it's not just mindless single tone. It like weaves and plays itself, and you can really move around through it and make the guitar do something with it too. So I love my setup because I don't play in every song, but I play, I'm only a rhythm guitarist, but I can just hammer out some really strong chords. I can ride that feedback wave.
Voice master.
Yeah, well, I mean, but you're the lead. He's the one that, is making all the amazing patterns with music. And Brad too, he turns on the wah pedal on his bass and it goes off, so.
So we do use a couple of pedals now.
Yeah.
Right? Brad's got a dozer for like the Cosmic Psycho's 90.
We got
pedal.
that for him for his birthday.
We do love those guys and used to play with them in the old days.
Cosmic Psychos, yeah.
Great dirty sound. And I use a fuzz and a wah. That's about it.
Fiona, the band is called Seawitch, and you're known for your knowledge of witchcraft through the books you've written and the talks that you've given. How does witchcraft play a part in your life today?
Well, on a daily basis, it influences, a lot of things. Like I've kind of been identifying as a modern witch for a really long time, decades. So it's just all sorts of little things. You may choose to determine the significance of a particular flower blooming at a particular time, or I have an altar in my office space, which is a spare bedroom here, but that's where I do that's like Seawitch Central. That's where all this stuff happens out of, that's more business oriented. And my little altar's there with all my stuff on it, and David knows not to go near it. But performing with Seawitch for me, because the lyrics are derived from specific witchcraft related rituals and spells, particularly like at the time of this interview, we did a show on Saturday just a few days ago, and it was great. It was a really great turnout, and it was the first with our new drummer Adam, and he's so solid. And it just the band is only as good as the drummer. David said that, so. And really,
it's made it easy to play.
Makes it so easy, and so I didn't have
made
to
you
worry.
Sound better than you are.
Yeah,
it's really good.
And I didn't have to worry, not worry, but I could just really let go. And I just knew that anywhere I went energetically, I'm going to land, because there's this monster behind me just keeping us back, And I think we all played in this very wild way, yet very tight, So for me, as I'm singing the lyrics, I started to feel them move through me in more of a magical way that felt truly transformative. And that's where, from a witch's perspective, when we do our rituals and spells, it's to create change in your life, harmony in some way, to create balance again if there's imbalance, or to stir things up if you want to sort of find some kind of cauldron of creation to cook up something new. I just felt really happy. I really enjoyed the gig on Saturday so much. It felt so enjoyable. It felt actually magical to me, transformative at that level. And even more so because I'm singing these words and lyrics that are derived from very deep spiritual kind of ideas and approaches to living that I actually live and do.
It was fun.
Before the pandemic in 2019, you had a reunion tour with your old band, FFX. How did that go?
Well, we did kind of what we called a farewell tour in 2019, thinking that was it. And we had done a couple of reunion tours nearly 10 years prior. Well, not 10, but maybe six years prior. We did come back out to Australia in, I think it was 2011 and 2012. That should be right. And then, I came back out to Australia and formed the band to do that. And then the farewell tour was 2019. And what I loved about that, we only did it on the East Coast. But I loved it because it just you know, I've always said Def FX fans are like the best fans because they're so enthusiastic, and it's wonderful that there's so many bands from the 90s now that are reforming and playing their, you know, their classic catalogue, you know, and so there's this great energy out there. And David's heard me tell this story, but when Def FX got together in 2019 and was supposed to be making it the farewell tour, well, it became the Never Say Never tour because we realised maybe we might want to play again one day, especially as life circumstances brought me back to Australia to live. But even then now, Seawitch is like so much more of a priority for me than reforming Def FX and performing would be. But the one thing I will say, and again, David's heard me say this, is that one show particular that Def FX did in Sydney, which was, I guess, June of 2019, was at Crowbar in Leichhardt in Sydney, and it was packed out. It was a great gig. And the front row was full of all these really young faces. Like, obviously our audience is going to be more that kind of time of, you know, going to be our age, you know, sort of thing. So that there was this row of really young kids singing along to every word. And at the end of the show, I had to ask, they all came up, wanted my autograph. I'm like, are you here with your parents? How do you even know we exist? You know, and they said they'd been studying us at university. They took a music course, I guess, or music, whatever it is, module, whatever, at university, and they chose to study 90s music, and they chose to study Def FX as one of the bands because of the way we created music, being that we layered samples and put heavy guitar over the top, and that whole appropriation process we used to create our music. Subliminal hooks, all that stuff. So they studied it and they came to see us. So that was really, really fun.
Just thinking you never had to worry about drummers back then, did you?
No, like never. We just didn't have
Easy
one.
band to be.
Easy. Yeah. Drama is not drama.
It's funny you should mention that, because I don't know if you remember, I was at Duke magazine and when we did the Yamaha Rock Awards.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And
in 19
I presented you guys with the Duke Award, and I remember Michael Gudinski saying to you guys that you should get a drummer.
I remember he also said, may he rest in peace, that wonderful man. He was such a, like, he played a role in a lot of things that happened in my life from there on. He gave us that night, he said, my pick of the night's Def FX. And he said that on TV. He said sound effects, special effects, whatever the name was, they were my pick of the night. And that really helped us, because that at the time tipped us toward, as well as getting the Duke Encouragement Award, which was a huge honour. But that comment from him tipped us into getting a record deal offered quite soon after that, and great management too, you know, at the time. And yeah, it was when Michael passed, I found that clip of that moment, and it's on our Instagram, on Def FX's Facebook page, and on my personal page.
Yeah. So the album Well of Spells is out October 21. You're launching it on the 22nd, Saturday night in Perth. Then you've got some Victorian shows. What can we expect from Seawitch live?
Oh, just crank it, go off as hard as we can. I think for that time, you know, I think that's what you're in a band for. It's just like going surfing. It's fun, and you do it. Like Tim Rogers said, you work all your way up to, you know, you only get this 1 hour to go off, and if you're playing well and it's all happening and the crowd's interacting, it's just fun. It's just joy. But it only lasts an hour, and then all of a sudden you walk away and it's like, wow, it's gone. So yeah,
I don't feel like that though. It doesn't disappear for me. It's like it resonates for days. Like,
and jamming is good. That's
we have
like
great
a sport.
jams.
I love it.
Yeah.
But the tour that we're doing in Victoria is really exciting for us, because it's our first time out of WA, first time Seawitch is outside of WA. We've got 3 amazing shows. We've been invited to be a part of the Do the Pop Festival that's at Port Campbell, and we're going to be playing that on the Saturday the 28th. So we're so stoked. That's with Stoner, who are a band from the US that are touring, that's members of, you know, the founder of Caius, Brant Borg, along with Nick Oliveri, who is Caius's first bass player, and then Nick was in Queens of the Stone Age, obviously. So they have Stoner. And then there's like New Christ are reforming for it. Our mates Hoss are playing. There's so many great bands on that weekend.
Be good to check out
at the festival. And then on the Sunday, so we do that on Saturday. On Sunday, we're playing a sold-out show at the Gasto in Collingwood with Stoner and Mario Lally and the Rubber Snake Charmers, who are all coming over from America, coming over from California. And then the Monday night is our big night, which is actually Halloween, Monday the 31st, the commercial Halloween, because real witches would know in the Southern Hemisphere that that's actually our more of our Beltane fertility festival time, because it's all very seasonal. And in the Northern Hemisphere, it's Samhain, which is the festival of the dead, where the winter's kind of playing out on the land and in people's lives. So, but every real witch enjoys the commercial Halloween as much as anyone else. So, but we have this epic album launch happening at the Tote, and we're playing with Hoss, Electric Purrs, who features Dennis Tech's daughter Hannah playing, which is pretty big deal for us anyway. And then we also have DJ Jane Gazzo, who's a really good old mate of mine. I've known her since recovery days, and she's an awesome DJ. So the Tote's like our big album launch on the Monday night on the actual Halloween. And the best news is Tuesday's public holiday. So, and from what I understand, there's tons of tickets already sold. So it's going to be an epic night. And we're going to have the album available there in vinyl and CD and T-shirts and all sorts of fun stuff. So it'll just be a really fun night.
I think our drummer's favourite band is Stoner, so he's so
excited.
So stoked. And I'm excited to see what gear they use as well. And, you know, the guy who wrote Green Machine, which is one of our favourite
songs ever from Caius. Yeah, I mean, Brant wrote Green Machine. And Nick actually played on the recording, even though in the video it's Scott Needham, the bass player who came after Nick and Caius, but it's Nick's actual bass track on that song. Anyway, it's just going to be epic. Yeah. I mean, who would think at this point in life you'd just still be getting to do stuff like this? It's so much fun. And there's so much great music out there in the world now. And it never fails to, like, amaze me when I just think, oh, my gosh, I'm so lucky to be doing this again. I never, if David hadn't called me, I wasn't doing music. I was working as a commercial pilot. I kind of thought that's not really ever going to happen again. And then to get to do it and to pick up a guitar again for the first time in 30 years, because I played guitar in the Mothers, but I put it down for Deaf Effects. I never picked it up again. And now I'm playing more than I ever have. And David's a great coach, you know. So he encourages me, and I just have so much fun with it. I mean, who would have thought? Such a blessing.
So, yeah, the plane's gone, but you've still got your broomstick, you still got your guitar. So
I still have my pilot's license. I could fly again, but it'd be a real hassle to convert my license here. But I could go back to the States and fly. But right now I'm just having too much fun being in a rock band again.
So what's the grand plan for Seawitch?
Definitely going to record again. We've already written some new material that we've already booked in to record.
Good songs with a new producer, which is pretty exciting.
Him, which we're pretty excited about.
And just do that. Let's just see what happens. We'll just keep going and keep it rolling as long as we can and having fun.
Yeah, and just I think now that we're doing this trip outside of Western Australia and getting an opportunity to play in front of Victorian people, fans even, because we have got fans now, you know, and there's people who are excited to come and see us, you know, and as a new band, Seawitch, you know, even though we've all been in other bands. But I think I'm hoping what will happen is that we'll keep getting more opportunities to tour Australia. Someone asked me the other day, oh, do you want to tour overseas and this and that? And I actually don't, personally, I don't feel that, I don't even have that on the radar. I mean, Deaf Effects was lucky. We toured America 3 times, we toured Japan, Blink 182 opened, then we played, then No Doubt played. I mean, I've kind of had these amazing international touring experiences. I think there's so much opportunity in Australia now, especially post-COVID. People are hungry to go out and gather together and have fun and play, listen to live music and jump around again. And I think
it's not for fame or money. I mean,
been there, done that.
And, you know, hey, it's music. But,
it's fun. It's not. It doesn't have to be a career.
Just put it out there. It's art, and see what happens with it, and where you can take it. It's good.
All right, guys. Well, it's been great to chat, and we look forward to the album and the gigs.
Cheers. Thanks, Greg.
Legend.